Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Still unnamed, but that's all right. Corporate has not yet gotten back with me on whether or not they wanted to actually give us a sanctioned name or just keep being a nameless podcast. Doesn't really matter. Anyways, I have with me a memo sent from, let's see, who is this from? Oh, wow, this is from the boss. Okay, all right, gotta sit up in my seat, gotta adjust here. It says, from the boss, glad tidings and happy holidays to all those loyal employees who have not yet abandoned your posts. Though I had originally placed your Christmas bonuses in thoughtfully curated wrapping paper, let's see, it seems the bonuses themselves grew restless and have migrated away from the break room. Finders keepers, signed to the boss. Okay, well, that's disconcerting. I feel like that sort of gives me an inkling into what the bonuses are, but at the same time, very vague, which, I think that's kind of par for the course as far as the boss is concerned. I am joined today by Rachel. Say hello, Rachel.
Hello.
And we are standing in possibly the largest library I have seen since Beauty and the Beast. What is this?
Love the library. For me, it's like a little escape, you know? Uh, the job here is a lot of work sometimes, and sometimes I just can't take it. So I come to the library to, hide among the shelves for a little bit and like take a deep breath and let myself be calmed by the books before I go back out for some more work.
I was just gonna ask what all the big pieces of spiked wood are stuck inside the floor at certain points. What's that about?
Like I said, I come here to calm down.
This is how you've chosen to do that.
A little bit of destruction. If you've heard like some loud like screaming when you walked by here, no you haven't. That's just me. We're fine.
You fortified the library, which is interesting. It's a bastion of knowledge, I guess. This is just a place you go to hang out. Is there a librarian on duty? How does this work?
If there is a librarian, I have never met them. Every time I come here, it's I normally just waltz right in. I haven't seen anyone. You're actually the first person I've seen in the library in quite a while.
Yeah, well, I know that like the company owning this library, they encourage the employees to come in here and I don't know, learn things for free, but to be quite honest with you, I've never really taken advantage of that. And it wasn't until I, started looking for an exit to the building that I accidentally stumbled across this place. I think the fortifications sort of I assumed that this was going to be some sort of armory based on how heavily fortified the outside of the door was. So when I walked in here and I just saw a lot of books, just a lot of... Is that a book fort? Like a fort made of books over there?
Yes. It's cozy. You know,
Okay. Okay.
it's such a massive room that, like I said, it's nice being surrounded by books. They're like safe. So yes, there's a fort. It's nice and cozy in there. You can't go in because you don't have the password.
Oh,
So
okay. All right. Well, there's no easy transition, but I just wanted to start off. So earlier, I was looking up on the terminal. I was trying to figure out like some talking points, some conversational stuff. And the first thing, because I know that you really like mathematics. So the first thing that I thought to look up was like the craziest like mathematicians who just had like crazy lives, right? And I'm sure
Mhm.
you probably have some. But then I got off on a different trail because I also found 15 of history's greatest mad scientists. And I was
Ooh.
thinking to myself, I was like, this is probably going to take me not in the direction I had originally planned. Like, it's not going to be mathematicians. But I kept scrolling down here, and sure enough, I found Pythagoras on here.
Yes.
I want to read Pythagoras' entry on here. Again, This is the link to the actual article will be below, but I just wanted to read their entry on Pythagoras because it confused me. So this is what it says. Anyone who took high school math knows about the Pythagorean theorem, but they might not know that in addition to being a brilliant mathematician, Pythagoras really hated eating beans. If that sounds more like a personal preference than a mark of madness, consider the fact that he not only avoided eating legumes, but he went so far as to forbid his followers from eating them as well. It's unclear where Pythagoras' bean aversion came from, though some believe Pythagoras saw them as sacred. According to one legend, Pythagoras died when he was being pursued by a group of ruffians, but refused to seek refuge in a nearby bean field?
I have never heard this before.
I'm not gonna lie, I confused Pythagoras' death with Archimedes, I think. Or no, Aesop. I thought that Pythagoras was the one who got chucked off a cliff, but I'm pretty sure that was Aesop.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I have paid way more attention to like Pythagoras's legacy than how he ended. So I for any of these guys, Aesop and Archimedes, again, their legacies, awesome. How they died, I have no idea.
Well, not just that, but also just like, I feel like for a lot of things, not just math, but in general, to be truly proficient at anything and be like really crazy good at stuff, I feel like a lot of these historical people, like these famous people, you have to have like a shade of insanity to you. At least you have to have some eccentricity. Like
Yeah.
like founding fathers, famous scientists, doesn't matter, or millionaire, literally, like, or politician, like you have to have something a little bit, you have to have a couple screws loose.
I also think like having, a couple screws loose or something weird like that probably led to some of the outside the box thinking
Yeah, exactly.
that, yeah, that let them come up with all these crazy things that they came up with.
Yeah, this list just gets crazier and crazier the more I look at it. Like some of the things in here, there's a person on here, a couple people actually, who may have inspired Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Like people who actually, I think one of the guys actually, let's see, Johann Conrad Dippel. Born in Castle Frankenstein in 1673, Johann Conrad Dippel was a theologian, alchemist, and scientist who developed a popular dye called Prussian blue that is still used to this day, but Dippel is better remembered for his more controversial experiments. He mixed animal bones and hides together in a stew he called Dippel's oil, which he claimed was an elixir that could extend the lifespan of anyone who consumed it. He also loved dissecting animals, and some believe that he even stole human bodies from Castle Frankenstein. Dippel is often cited as an inspiration for Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, though the claim remains controversial.
Do you think Dippel's oil could also be an idea of where we got snake oil, or do you think those two are just
Oh, interesting.
unconnected? Yeah.
I don't even understand like snake oil. That definitely sounds like it definitely sounds like hocus pocus, like snake oil. It sounds like something that some guy out west invented. Actually, screw it. I'm just gonna look it up on the terminal here. Let's see, snake oil. Snake oil is a term used to describe deceptive marketing, healthcare fraud, or a scam. Similarly, snake oil salesman is a common expression used to describe someone who sells, promotes, or is a general proponent of some valueless or fraudulent cure, remedy, or solution. Term comes from the snake oil that used to be sold as a cure-all elixir for many kinds of physiological problems. Many 19th century United States and 18th century European entrepreneurs advised and sold mineral oil, often mixed with various active and inactive household herbs, spices, and drugs, and compounds, but containing no snake-derived substances whatsoever.
That's why I was wondering, like, with what was his name, Dippel?
Yeah, Dippel.
Yeah, I'm
Dippel's
wondering
oil.
if Dippel's oil like had any connection to snake oil, or if they just happened to be two independent things that both of them were like, yeah, it's an oil. It'll cure things.
Somehow, Dippel's oil is so much worse sounding than snake oil. Like,
It really is.
snake oil sounds like you could buy it, like, in the store, but Dippel's oil, you have to go to Dippel, and he has to puree some stuff for you. That's no good.
Yeah,
That's
Dippel's
no
oil
good.
Very sketchy.
I heard once a long time ago, I have no idea if this is true, but I heard that some of the core ideas for the book, like for the story, Frankenstein, like
Hmm.
Mary Shelley was at some dinner party with like her husband and some of his writer friends, and it was like a stormy night and like everyone was sort of settled in for the evening, and I guess that they had like an a story battle. Like they each started telling scary stories. And I have no idea if this is true. This might be complete fabrication. I heard that while she was telling it, like one of the guys in the room got so freaked out that he had to leave the room.
Dang, you go, Mary Shelley.
I mean, isn't that's awesome?
Yeah,
And
no, that's amazing.
I think it's very fascinating to me because I've talked with people about this before. Because when you either read the actual book or watch adaptations of it, you realize that like the whole concept of zombies as we have them in modern day, like the original Frankenstein's monster is so much more scary than a regular zombie ever could be because Frankenstein's monster is intelligent. That's what makes him so scary. Like I didn't know that.
I didn't either. So most of my exposure to Frankenstein, other than like, through osmosis of like you see different things about it, has been through like that Veggie Tales of Where's God When I'm Scared.
Totally. Oh gosh, what was that guy's name? Didn't he have a name? Oh, I
Oh,
gotta.
dude, we gotta check the terminal.
Yeah, hold on. I gotta do a VeggieTales deep dive.
Let's
Okay,
see.
Phil Winkelstein is the name of the character in the show.
Oh wow.
I had
Yeah, he's
no
the
idea.
Franken celery.
Frankencelery. That's okay. Okay. Now we're we're firing on all cylinders now. Frankencelery. Okay, of course. I just had to pull that up on the good old fashioned Big Idea wiki, which I love that exists just as a starter. That's
I
amazing.
on the Big Idea Wiki. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, so Franken celery is like the most exposure that I've had. Frankenstein's monster, and all that, other than, that whole thing where it's like Dr. Frankenstein is actually him, and the monster is
Yeah. Yep.
Frankenstein's, that
That's
whole
like
thing.
that's like everyone's favorite push your glasses up moment. You know that moment?
Hmm.
Where it's like
Oh yeah,
everyone's
absolutely.
ready to correct people on that one. Everyone knows that one. Everyone just loves making sure people know.
Yes,
Actually, it's Frankenstein's monster, not actually Frankenstein. Mm.
yeah, it's like when you mentioned earlier, like things that could have inspired Frankenstein. It's like, do you mean Dr. Frankenstein or
such
his
an
monster?
such an anime moment of pushing the glasses up.
Yes, absolutely. I had no idea that he had intelligence because I feel like he's never, at least anything I've seen, and again, it's mostly through osmosis, I've
Yeah.
never heard of him portrayed that way. And yeah, if we portray like zombies like that, zombies on their own, they're scary because they're little monsters, and the idea of like eating people, and that's scary.
Right.
But if zombies had intelligence, like undead intelligence would be terrifying.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, like that whole genre has been so played out that it's kind of it's been interesting over the last couple of years to like see I guess new adaptations and permutations of the zombie formula just
Hmm.
because the stock standard one's been pardon the pun, it's been done to death.
Yes, absolutely. Especially like with really popularized shows like The Walking Dead, and you get movies like I Am Legend, um, and things like that. I think World War Z also has a zombie
Yes.
element to it.
Mhm.
So it's been, and those are like some of the super popular or well-known ones. I'm sure there's more though that I'm missing.
Which I also feel like they've made their way into just a lot of cartoon shows, like even for kids. Like there's going to be like a zombie episode. There's a lot of zombie
Yeah,
episodes that I can think of. Like
yeah, you're right, there are.
even if it's not straight up, they don't actually say it's a zombie, some sort of infectious thing that starts claiming people. Like,
Hmm.
even if it's goofy or weird, like, there was one in Ben 10. Obviously, there's Gravity Falls. Like, it makes
Yeah.
its rounds. Like, or even there was a Batman series I watched where it was essentially zombie type stuff.
Oh, really? What series was that?
It was it was just called The Batman. It was from the early 2000s, and I think it was like the premise was I want to say it was I don't remember which villain it was who did it to him. Maybe it was the Joker, but he gets gassed with something and it's making him hallucinate that everyone is turning into zombies. But like
Oh,
for
wow.
the lion's share of the episode, you think Batman's right? Like you think that it's actually happening. But then
Wow.
as the episode goes on, like Robin and Batgirl basically have to try and like stop him and inoculate him because he thinks that they're zombies. So he
And they're
thinks
like,
that
dude,
like
it's fine. There's
yeah,
no zombies here.
he basically thinks that all of Gotham is zombies now. And so he's like fighting people off trying to survive and like they're trying to rescue him basically from himself because he thinks that everyone's a zombie. But I don't remember which villain gassed him or something like that. It was an interesting episode.
Honestly, you could probably say Fear Man, and I'm sure there's some Batman villain that has a similar title.
So many. I uh the last episode I pulled up a list of just like some crazy specifically Batman villains, and some of the Batman villains on that list were so absurd that because originally whenever I think about doing like a fun little game show type things for these episodes, I always try and make up a couple of my own to make it like a true false situation. But for the DC Batman supervillains list, I literally couldn't because I was thinking to
They're so
myself,
obnoxious.
well, because I was thinking to myself, I was like, there's no way for me to confirm whether or not this thing that I just thought I made up, whether or not it actually exists. Because they could be right that it does exist, even if I say it doesn't. Like, I'll give you an example. So, like, when I was probably 9 or 10,
Mhm.
I thought that I created a DC, a hero, not necessarily specifically DC, just a superhero called Animal Man. I was positive that I had done that because I knew who Beast Boy was because my buddy James was way into Teen
Teen
Titans.
Titans. Yeah.
But I hadn't watched the show, so I just came up with this character named Animal Man, right? And
Okay.
then one day, I was on the internet, and at one point in time, DC's website actually had like a small compendium of superheroes.
Okay.
And I, to this day, I don't remember why I was on the website, or I don't think I actually looked up the words Animal Man. That's the crazy part, is there was just like a tab at the top of the screen that had a bunch of like bubbles with like character like faces in it and their names underneath. And I promise you, there was one character on their website called Animal Man. And
Like
I
word for word?
like literally he was a blonde superhero guy who turns into animals, and I got so upset. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, I hadn't even heard of that before.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Dude, it happens to me so often.
I see that is one thing where I feel like we're so inundated with just, media and the internet sometimes that um it happens where someone comes up with something new and then someone's like, you stole that joke, or someone else already did that. And
Exactly.
the best way I've heard it put is one time I was talking with a friend about this, and they said, there is nothing new under the sun, which obviously is like a quote from something else, but like it's true. Like you thought you came up with something new, and like the reality is there is nothing new under the sun.
I think that's Ecclesiastes, like one of the most like downer books of the Bible. I'm pretty sure. I'm 95% sure that's in Ecclesiastes. I just don't remember where. But yeah, that even that phrase is kind of funny because people quote it and
Mhm.
use it in the exact same like I guess situations. They all use that phrase whenever the topic of like originality comes up, which in and of itself is funny because we only have so many ways of saying that there's nothing new.
Because there's nothing new under the sun.
Exactly. There's so few ways of putting it. So last time we chatted at the company meeting about respecting the slippery when wet signs for the company. This would have been a couple months ago, last time I saw you. You had mentioned that you are amassing a list of character names.
So I was watching Avatar, like The Last Airbender, because I love it and highly recommend to anyone who hasn't seen it. It's so good. But there's this point where they go to, it's called Wan Shi Tong's library. And the spirit in there, Wan Shi Tong, is known as the one who knows 10,000 things. And like upon hearing that, that sounds like kind of an impressive title, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the more I thought about it, the more I was like, not that hard to know 10,000 things. I mean, if you think about it, I could write any number between 1 and 10,000, and you could tell me what it is. Like, 10,000 numbers, therefore 10,000 things. So I wanted to see, I'm like, if I know more characters than Wan Shi Tong knows things. Because I thought about it and like there's so many characters in so many different things. In between different like shows you watch, games you play, books that have been read, there are so many characters. So I was composing a list of, do I know 10,000 characters? And it's still a work in progress because 10,000 is a lot of characters to type.
Yes.
But the parameters that I put around it was it had to be someone that I knew from memory. Because if I feel like if I had to look it up, then I don't really know the character because I had to look up the character.
Okay.
So it was something that it's just, hey, like pick a show, like Avatar, for example, name every single character you can from the show. How many do you know? I think I got 55, I want to
Holy
say.
smokes.
Yeah. Um, which honestly was more than I thought there was going to be in Avatar.
That's a lot of characters. Well, hold on. How long did the show go for?
61 episodes.
61. How long are the episodes? Like 20 minutes?
20 minutes. Yep.
Dang. That's a lot of content.
Yeah. And that's why I was like kind of proud of that one specifically, just because that's a lot of characters to remember when you think of the fact that, you have your main group and you have like the main villains, you have a few recurring characters, and then there's a whole bunch of side characters. Like, I'm looking at my list and there's like Jong Jong, the deserter, who comes up a few times, but not that much. You've got Jet and Pipsqueak and Smellerby and Longshot who like have, like a couple episodes, but they're not there that long. Or Jinwei and Wei Jin, who they don't even have like a full episode. They're just told they're actually completely in universe made up characters. And they're used to like tell a story to try to make two people stop fighting. So there's a whole bunch of random side characters, but it's been a fun little project of like when I have a few minutes, like, what's another character that I know that I can add to this list?
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a very interesting goal. And as far as like memorization, I was so I looked up on the terminal like what the longest sequence of like anything that has been memorized. And even though I didn't find like anything across all of time, what I did run across is a Guinness World Record page that was achieved this year on January 18th. And basically the record is for the longest sequence of objects memorized in 1 minute. So in 1 minute, this person, Nabal Pajiyar, was able to memorize a sequence of 59 objects.
Dang.
in 1 minute was able to recall like the sequencing of them.
That's well, that's nearly one per second. It's just over a second
That's
per
insanity. So
object.
it says Nabal has been memory training for the past 12 years. He was previously achieved this record, but is reclaiming the title as this is his passion. In 1 minute, a sequence of 59 objects was able to, like, I guess, recreate it, probably. Like, it doesn't
Mhm.
have a lot of details, but I'm guessing, like, they give you 59 objects or something, and then you get a minute, and then you turn around, and then they, like, scramble them, and then you have to. That's like a Super Mario Party game gone horribly wrong. Like, these are the sorts of games that I suck at when I play games, or just like memory games.
You're playing those little light up games, where you have to like memorize the sequence of the
Exactly.
light. Yeah.
Even like Simon Says, like where it's like the sequence of 4 colors that light up. Whenever
Yeah.
that appears in any game, I'm one of those people. I have to say it out loud. Like, I can't not. I have to be like red, red, yellow, red, blue, green. Like, I have to like say it out loud in order to not forget it. Because if I can't memorize it silently for some reason. I'm like, I have to add it to the sequence out loud. Otherwise, I will forget it.
Which so I do that too, but that's actually a proven memory technique of because it's multiple ways of getting the information. So if you just read it, like just observe it, you're only interacting with it one way. If you say it as it happens, because that's multiple ways of like interacting with it, that's both auditory and visual processing that actually helps you memorize it better.
Interesting. I guess that, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Because I know that, like, obviously there's been a lot of studies done over, like, and there's even some controversy about, like, whether or not people are better auditory or visual or whatever, however they learn, basically.
Exactly. And like that's the biggest thing about it. So I think that's why like question-based learning or like asking questions when you have them helps a lot too, because that's something where you're interacting with something and clearly, you have to think about it to come up with a question to say, "Hey, I don't get this. Like, can you tell me what's going on?" So I know that the acronym for the different learning styles that you mentioned is VARK, VARK. And I know that it's visual, auditory, and the K is kinesthetic. I don't remember the R. I want to say it's repetition.
Hmm. Okay.
But yeah, I know those are the types. Because I've done like some tutoring in the past for mathematics, and that's something that I have found is if you can, one, doing it yourself helps a lot because you're the one writing it. Again, that comes into like that repetition, that visual type thing, that interacting with it in multiple ways because like you're the one doing it versus someone else handing it to you. Um, but yeah, no, it's fascinating.
Yeah, so I pulled it up. It's visual and then oral, so auditory, and then read and write, which is interesting. They have
Oh,
those
right.
clumped together, which I guess that definitely goes hand in hand with repetition of like writing it down, not just being
Okay.
like, oh yeah, I'll remember that. No, no, no. Write it down,
Yeah.
read what you're doing. And then, yeah, kinesthetic, which is just a fun little word to say.
Kinesthetic is like interacting with the material as you're doing it. So like for example, if you were in a lab like doing the science experiment.
Right, which is why, like, yeah, a lot of people do better when they have someone supervising who actually just steps back and just lets
Hmm.
a person do it themselves. It's like, I'll walk you through the process, but you need to actually be doing the things in order to do it. Like, I'm not going to do it for you. So it's like,
Hmm.
it's the difference between, uh, like, if you were taking a class on engine repair, the difference between,
Hmm.
like, staring at a diagram versus a guy with grease on his hands taking your hands and putting them on the engine and saying, okay, I'm letting go now. I will walk you through what you do, but you do this like
Yeah,
yourself, which I probably fit more solidly into that category of learning than anything else.
I know I do. Like I can watch him work on the engine all day long until it's me, like with the wrench in my hand, turning whatever's in the engine. Clearly, I do not know how engines work. Um, but until it's me like doing that, I it'll take me a lot longer to learn.
Right. Exactly.
So something fun, this is going to be a little bit of a swing back, but just something fun that I wanted to bring up when you mentioned the mathematicians earlier.
Yeah.
So there's this fun thing in mathematics, and I don't know if other disciplines have their own version of it, but I learned about this when I was studying math, and I thought it was hilarious. There's a thing called an Erdős number, and I believe I'm saying that correctly. So there was a Hungarian mathematician named Paul Erdős, and he published, he is the most published mathematician ever.
Wow.
Like, yeah, he published, I want to say, I'm looking it up on the terminal right now. I want to say it was around 1,500 mathematical papers during his lifetime.
Wow.
Yeah. And he had over 500 collaborators. I believe the exact number is 509 people that he worked with. So, because he published so many things, it started as a joke and then just kind of spread from there of like he is like number 0. If you worked directly with Paul Erdős, you get an Erdős number of 1 if you like published a paper.
Oh my
If
gosh.
if you publish with someone who worked with Erdős, you are 2, and so on down the line.
Oh, so it's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but with Paul Erdos. Like how
Yeah.
many circles, concentric circles, are you separated from actually working in tandem with Paul Erdos?
Yes, the
That's
most like published mathematician ever.
wow. That's so funny.
It is. It cracks me up too because I had a professor who I don't remember his Erdos number. I want to say it was either 3 or 4, but he stood up in class and was like, "Hey, if y'all want to do summer research with me, like if we get published, your Erdos number will either be 4 or 5, if I could remember what his was."
Like one more degree removed, but still that's such a like who would think to do that? Like that's so crazy. But I guess when
Right?
you have that many mathematical papers published, like that's just I mean, I guess you have carte blanche to do whatever the heck you want with regards to making your own number. like,
Yeah.
I feel like you've earned that.
He wrote papers with a total of 509 co-authors. And yeah, I believe it's just something where it was started as a joke. If I had to guess, I imagine it started as a joke and then it just went from there as um more and more people kept doing it. Uh let's see. This says okay, it says the idea of the Erdos number was originally created by the mathematician's friends as a tribute to his enormous output. This is just on Wikipedia. Um, Later, it gained prominence as a tool to study how mathematicians cooperate to find answers to unsolved problems. Because, as mathematicians, we can't just look at numbers and be like, oh, that's a fun thing. Like, we're going to do something with the numbers. Um, our summer research has potential to be published, but it has not been published yet. But if it ever does get published and I get an Erdos number of 4 or 5, and you do math research with me and we publish that, you could be a 5 or a 6. I'm just saying.
So, everyone, it's the who cares about Christmas presents this year? Everyone wants Erdos numbers.
Everyone get their Erdos number.
How crazy would that be? The next big TikTok trend is everybody gets their own Erdos number.
Everybody furiously makes advances in mathematics so they can get published.
For clout.
So,
Well, good news,
wait, that
everyone. We're going to Neptune. Bad news is all of you did it for TikTok clout.
please, someone just gets in there solving the Collatz conjecture for clout. The Collatz conjecture is another like unsolved problem, which is why it's still a conjecture, but it's very fun. It's another fun one where basically you can start with any number and like following this pattern that the mathematician Collatz constructed for like if it's an odd or an even number, um you can always get down to the sequence like 4 2 1 4 2 1 over and over and over again, continuing this process over and over. um but you will always like get down to that no matter what number you put in, but we can't prove it, so it's just a conjecture.
Interesting.
So what you do is, I guess, to throw this out there, if any number, like, pick any number.
47.
47. Okay. So what you do is if it's an odd number, you are going to triple it and then you add 1 to it. So we're going to get 47 times 3 plus 1, which brings us to 142. When you get an even number, you divide it by 2. So we get 71. So we multiply it times 3 and then add 1, which gets us 214. We divide by 2, which gets us 107. If we continue this process, we'll get 322 and then 161. Wow, you picked a number that has a lot of odds. Okay, so that should get us to 484, unless I typed that wrong. We divide that by 2, we get 242. So we divide by 2 again to 121, which gets us 364. And then that's 182, 91, and so on and so forth. Like we can keep going. We're back to 274. You picked a very long string. I'm just gonna say this is really funny that you managed to find one so long with your first pick. 274 took us to 137 to 412 to 206. So we divide by 2 to 103. Darn, another odd. To 310. So we divide by 2 and we get 155, which, oh boy, is odd again. That takes us to 466. So we divide by 2. Did you just pick like the worst number?
I found it, everyone! I found the max number!
Dude, publish it.
It's a number that no matter how small you think it gets, it will always somehow manage to get bigger. Even when you're trying to decrease it, it just won't stop. It won't shut up. It's a number that won't shut up. It's the max number.
The max number. I forget what you even started with.
47.
47. Congratulations, Max. You have made the Collatz conjecture a huge pain. You know, I bet you there's a website that works out the Collatz conjecture yourself.
I have to know now. Like, I have to know.
Collatz conjecture calculator. Enter positive integer. 47. Calculate. It takes 104 steps.
Holy smokes!
To reach 1. Yeah, congratulations. I think I gave up. I see where I gave up. I was at like 566. So, the highest it will ever get when you are doing this calculation is 9,232. And then when it gets to that point, you can divide by 2, 3 different times. No, sorry, 4 times. And then it'll get back up. And then when you get to the end of the sequence, it gets down to 106, 53, 160, 80, 40, 20, 10, 5, 16, 8, 4, 2, 1.
So I just picked a crazy number.
You really did pick a crazy one to start with.
It was just supposed to be a simple here. Just give me any number. Give me any number. And
Number.
I mean, it works. It just takes, how many
works.
steps does it take?
104.
104 steps. Wow.
Yeah, it takes 104 steps to get down to 421. So it will satisfy, again, it satisfies the Collatz conjecture, but it took 104 steps to get there.
It's the most frustrating, stubborn number to pick.
Yeah, and essentially the idea is like no matter what number you pick, you'll always get down to 1. Because if you start at 4, you divide by 2, and that's even, and you divide by 2 and you get to 1. 1 is odd, so 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4, and it starts again, is the idea. And then, yeah, if you had picked, honestly, any basic number, we probably could have gotten there faster, but you picked 47.
I don't know. It was the first number that came to mind.
Do you want to get back on track?
There is no track. That's the beauty of it. I was gonna ask within the last year, like
Mhm.
as far as whether it's books or movies or TV shows or video games, literally could be anything. Like,
Mhm.
what was a piece of media that you found this year that you just enjoyed profusely? It doesn't have to be in any specific like order of like most enjoyable, but if you were to name a couple things like this year that you either discovered or came out this year and you gave it a shot and you really liked it, what were some of the standout things this year for you?
Hmm. Well, one that comes to mind immediately. Now, I will say this is within the last 2 years ish, so it is an additional year to your time frame. Um, but and it's gonna sound a little cheesy because I know that it is so well known and like popularized, and I feel like it gets a little bit of like, stigma for that. But the show, it's Naruto. And I know that like, oh my gosh, Naruto. But it was something that I watched it for the first time and uh it really made me think about a lot of different things. It's a lot deeper than it sounds, at least in my opinion, because of like how popularized, Naruto got, and for good reason. It's an amazing show. But one thing in it that I profusely enjoyed it, and I think part of why I thought so much about it is they talk about this thing called a cycle of hatred. And they're talking about how in the world they live in, they feel like they are constantly going through this cycle where someone hurts someone else. And so that person chooses to get revenge. It's like, you hurt me, so I'm going to hurt you.
Right.
And that person, of course, well, you attacked me, so I'm going to attack you. And it perpetuates this cycle of hatred over and over and over again, of everyone always trying to get retribution. And one of the huge themes of the show is your main character, Naruto. He's coming to grips with the fact that that is something that's happening and that it's wrong.
Mm.
And he's looking around and he's saying, I'm going to be the end of that cycle. Like, I'm going to find a way to stop this cycle of hatred, to stop trying to get
Interesting.
revenge.
I didn't know
Right?
that was an aspect to the show.
Yeah. And it's so cool. And no, I don't think if it's, I feel like what's popularized with Naruto, when people think of it, they're like, oh yeah, it's an anime. Um, And no, that's such a huge part of it. And it's an overarching theme, like over and over and over again. He's saying, like, I um I'm gonna be the end of that cycle. And I think that's really well done. I think there's also some really like there's some fun aspects in there too about like family and friendship, and determination.
Mm.
It's fun to see, again, Naruto, your main character, he never gives up. Like
Mm-hmm.
everything he does, he is stubborn almost to a fault. And it works out for him because he's the main character. Obviously, he's got some plot armor. But even if he didn't, um, when he gets in his mind to do something, no one else can stop him because he's gonna do it. And it's always in this context of like he wants to become the leader of his village because initially he wanted it so that everyone would notice him and people would respect him. But and also like the leader is the strongest, but he has these problems with his best friend Sasuke. Like Sasuke um is going down a very dark path. And Naruto is reflecting and he's like, how can I call myself the leader if I can't even save one friend?
Mm.
And I think that's a really interesting aspect too of just like character building, but that was something that did um it was a show that actually did deeply impact me. I cried almost every arc, which I will say I cry in everything. So that's so you could take that like with a bit of a grain of salt, but like there were moments in the show that I just sat there sobbing because it was really emotional and it's really well done. And I think we've talked about before, definitely at the last like company meeting that we had. Um, I think I mentioned how I'm like a little tired of villain redemption arcs.
So sick of these villains getting redeemed.
I am. And like I will say most, not all, but I feel like most of the time in Naruto, when the villains get redeemed, if they get redeemed, it's something that was earned. And if it wasn't earned, like there's some that there is no redemption for them. Most of
Right.
them, when they're bad, they are bad. And even if they do something like good in their last moments, that doesn't redeem them in your eyes. Like as a
Right.
viewer, they're not redeemed. They are still, hey, you're still a villain and you still did bad things. And like that's never going to change. Like no one is going to forget that. We're just going to be able to see that, you know, you met someone like Naruto most of the time who impacted you, who made you think, um, maybe we don't have to live in a world of hatred anymore. Maybe we can do something different. Maybe we can break that cycle.
And I really like what you had to say about like how the show impacted you, because I think this is something that I have to work on with
Mhm.
media in general, whether it's music or TV shows or books or whatever. And I don't know where I developed this, I guess, stereotypical hipster perspective of like, if it's popular, I want nothing to do with it. Like, I don't know
Yep.
where that impulse came from, because I don't know, maybe it's just because I've been burned before, like in school where I was forced to read quote unquote classic literature and just
Mhm.
sat in my chair saying to myself, like, this is awful. Like, I would never read this unless I
So,
absolutely had to for school, right? And I don't know if I think that could be part of it. Another part of it could be like when my sisters would be all excited about the hottest band that was playing over the radio. At some point in time, I just sort of determined if they like it and it's popular, I don't. I just decided that. And I've had to like untrain myself from that, because there is definitely delineation between shows that are well known because they're legitimately good, things like
mhm.
Naruto, versus
Mhm.
things that everyone says is good because that's what they've always been told is this piece
Yeah.
of media, this show, this book, this movie, whatever. It's a classic. You can't not like it. It's a classic. Like, you have to like.
Mhm.
And I think that's why, like, what you're doing, which is even though you're years removed from when it was originally released, actually
Mhm.
putting in the effort to, like, I don't know, watch the show and be like, you know what? I've heard a lot of hype about this. I'm just going to watch it and make a determination for myself. And
Yeah.
I think that's a rare impulse with a lot of people in modern day, where we get our information about new media that's released through the filter of what other people think and say about it. And whether we choose to acknowledge it or not, it does color our opinion of that thing, even if we've never seen it. If you go onto YouTube and you watch a reviewer talk about a new movie that you didn't sit in the theater and watch, and you watch a 10-minute long video where it's just dressing it down about all of its negative aspects and like not really talking about the positive, because hate watching's popular. Like, we're
Mhm.
that's just, where we're at. So it's
Yeah,
fun.
absolutely.
It's fun and more, I think it's easier to make a video complaining about something than it is a video about propping something up. And so if that's all we're intaking is just media that's talking about other media, and we never actually put in the time and the effort to actually go experience it for ourselves, we can form pretty serious opinions about things even though we've never seen it before. So like within the last year, I've really tried to crack down on making sure I clarify to people when they're like, what did you think about this show or that show? Even if I have like an onset opinion, or maybe I have a suspicion that it's not good, I try and reserve judgment, because it's like, to be fair, I haven't seen the show, so I can't speak too much on it. And I was really bad about that in like middle school and high school, about just people like voicing my opinions on a thing even though I hadn't really watched it, read it, etc.
So I think those are such amazing points. I fall into the same pit you do, where I also, it's not like this hipster thing, but something becomes popularized and I instantly am like, oh, well, I'm not gonna like that. I did that a lot with bands in high school. You mentioned your sisters, like me too. Band like One Direction was super popular, and I was like, well, I'm not gonna listen to them.
Right,
Um,
exactly.
and I do that a lot. Same as you with movies. I also had that problem in high school where, and even honestly, through a good amount of college, it's been a lot more recently that I've started to develop that mindset of, well, I haven't seen it. I've only seen commentary, so this is what I heard based
Right.
off of these videos, but like, let me clarify, I did not watch it.
Yes.
And when you talked about like it's a lot easier to hate on something, I 100% agree. I think it's so much easier to go out there and say like, here's everything bad about XYZ. I mean, I literally watched like a 2-hour video about a show that I did not like. I will say, I watched most of season 1 of this show. It's a 4-season show. I watched most of season 1. I did not enjoy it. And I found a video that's almost 2 hours long, like, this show is garbage, and here's why. It's literally what it's titled. It is titled, "This show is garbage and here's why."
Right.
And, um, and like I let that video like shape so many of my opinions about this show. And I didn't disagree with anything he said about season 1, but like I mean I can't necessarily have that judgment for the rest of it cuz I didn't watch it.
Even beyond that, like for every video that is giving the negative aspects of any piece of media, you can find just the same number of videos talking about the positive aspects of it too.
Exactly, but I feel like the positive ones are so much, at least in my opinion, I feel like the negative ones are always what come up in my feed. And like,
Me too.
yeah. And I don't know if it's just because it's what I click on, but I feel like positive ones of, hey, this is awesome and I loved this and here's why, like I don't find as often.
I guess it's probably about time I leave your fortified library to go and try and find my quote unquote Christmas bonus, which apparently has migrated. Gosh, I hate that word, boss. He's got to choose different words, because that's extremely unsettling.
They didn't tell you that they tied the bonuses to birds?
Birds.
Yeah.
Oh no. That can only mean one thing.
Enlighten me?
That's all right. It's nothing. It's just there's a man on the roof who's got an army of birds.
Wow, well, I'm really glad I've got this fortified library to hide in.
It's good you have all these pikes and scaffolds and forts and barricades, because I don't know what's going on with the Christmas bonuses. I'm gonna try and find one. Apparently, it's finders keepers, so even if it's not addressed to me, I really want to know what the Christmas bonuses are, especially if they're moving. I just gotta know.
Well, good luck with that. I already found mine.
Oh, you did? What was in it?
Well, it's mine.
Oh, you haven't opened it yet?
No,
Where is it?
I mean, it's in the fort. Remember my book fort that you're not allowed in?
Oh, so if you go in there right now, if you poke your
Hmm.
head in that fort, you're telling me you're gonna see your Christmas bonus still there. Is that what you're telling me?
It better still be there,
Go ahead. Go
is
go
all I'm
check.
gonna say.
Go check.
Fine,
Go check.
I'll go check. Yeah, I... Wait a minute. Oh, if you're going, I'm going too, because I don't think it's in there anymore.
I'm leaving. I'm leaving the library. We're leaving. I'm gone. Lock the door behind you.